Okay.
We're too funny. Okay. I am going to give them a minute and people are
Okay.
joining. Welcome, everyone. I just wanted you to hear that we are recording this. So please keep your camera off and yourself muted so that you don't show up in the recording and it'll just be me and Takima with our slides. We're going to give another minute or so as people are getting in. While we're doing that, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can share your name, your pronouns, where you are in the world, and anything else about you want to share. And so we'll do a little bit of introduction with ourselves too as we get started here. So thank you for joining us again tonight. This is Affirming Black Identity in the Early Years, and I will do more of an introduction. Somebody else is joining. There we go. Perfect. All right. And I got to repeat all that as people join. And I'll just, what is this? Somebody. Okay, I don't know that. Oh, somebody's messaging. Oh, sorry, I might have cut off your message, Lucina. Okay. Yes, thank you. Introduce yourself in the chat. We are I'm just gonna verbalize what I'm typing. We are recording, so please keep your camera off and microphone muted. Okay. All right. So I add that. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Name, pronouns, where you are
Oh, my
in
pronouns are
the
not here.
world and what you do with young children if you want, like the work you do. All right. And then I can copy those messages again. Jen's here. I haven't seen Jen Longley in a long time from my time in New York. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks, Lucina, for introducing yourself from Brooklyn. We got a lot of Brooklyn in the house. We've
Hey.
got Brenda from North Carolina. Hi, Jen. I just put a note in the chat that we are recording, so if you want to keep your camera off, I think you won't show up unless you speak, but I'm not sure, and I just want to let you know. I am going to spotlight myself and spotlight Takima, and that should help with the recording so that nobody shows up there. All right, so we can introduce ourselves in the chat. Welcome, Yvonne. Julia is here from Madison. Your name, your pronouns, where you're from. You can share what you do, what the kind of work you do with young children and the age groups and all that. And all right, we are good. So I'm going to share my screen and get us started. There we go. All right, look at that. So hopefully you guys can all see the screen. And we are going to try and have time at the end for Q&A, so you can be popping. You can pop them as you go, as I'll be monitoring the chat. And so while Takima's talking, I might go ahead and throw a question in there if it relates, or we'll try and save some time at the end as well too. Um, okay, and so I mentioned those few things. We are recording. There's a couple things you're going to be able to access. So if you have like your phone nearby, you'll want to scan the QR code as we go along, and then we will also email everyone a link to the recording and all of the resources that we're sharing. Everyone who registered will get that as well too. All right, awesome. Welcome, everyone. Tonight's webinar is called Affirming Black Identity in the Early Years. This is part of our Reflective Practitioner Series course called Seeing Ourselves, Seeing Each Other, Nurturing Healthy Identity in the Early Years. Um, and so each month, what we were doing with this course is we were discussing how to affirm the racial identity of a particular group, right? So we started with Latina, Indigenous, Asian American, multiracial. Tonight it's Black identity, and then March we end with healthy white identity. Because this is the day 2 of the 2026 National Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, we are offering this open to everyone and not just our reflective practitioner subscribers. However, if you'd like to access the other materials, you can become a subscriber for $8 a month, and you can access all of the materials, the recordings, the reflective workbooks, and all of the resources from the other sessions along with tonight. You'll get everything for tonight's session, but if you want the others, and I'll drop a link in the chat for you to look into registering for the course. So my name is Denisha Jones, and I'm the Executive Director of Defending the Early Years. And tonight, my guest and co-presenter is DEY National Advisor Takima Bunch-Smith. So I'll let Takima say anything else about herself if she'd like.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I think I might share a little bit more as we go along. I can
Okay.
just say that I've been doing this work in early childhood for 30 years, 31 now that it's 2026. Thanks, Jen. I've been doing a lot of different roles, but I started out as an assistant teacher in a threes classroom and then a fours classroom. So the core and the heart of my work is with the little youngest people and those who care for them and educate them.
Awesome. Great. And I've known Takima for many years now, through the Black Lives Matter at School symposium that she hosted in New York City. I think, was that a month ago? Maybe some other time.
It
I'm not
was
sure.
in 2019, I think that was when we first met, but
When
we've
we
worked
first met,
together
yeah,
so
because
much now.
I was watching them before then, and then I moved to New
Mhm,
York, and I was able to attend my first one in person,
mhm.
and so it's been lovely. All right. So what are we gonna do today, if I can get this to advance. There we go. All right. So first off, if you scan the blue QR code at the top, you're going to find our framework for fostering healthy identity in the early years that we published last year in 2025. That's what this course is based on. So we made the framework, we put it out there. We did another course where we took you through the framework in about three parts, and then we decided to do this course where we go through each for each different group, right? For really thinking about how early childhood educators, caregivers, and parents can affirm their identity in the early years. The other thing that we have, the black QR code, if you scan that, that is for access to the reflective workbook. Now, when you scan that, it's a Google Doc. So if you're signed into Google, it's going to prompt you to make a copy because you can type directly in it. So we want you to have your own copy that no one else can access. So it's going to come up. If you're signed into Google, it's going to say, would you like to make a copy? And you just say yes. And then it'll give you your own personal copy that you can have. If you're not signed into Google, it's going to ask you to sign into Google so that you can access it. So just sharing that with you. Um, Okay, and again, and I'll drop links in the chat as soon as I have a minute to do that. So tonight we're going to begin by unpacking what we call Blackness in the diaspora. It's to really just talk about Black demographics. What do we mean when we say Black? I've done that for every other group, and it felt weird doing it for Black, but no, we do need to unpack that because Blackness is not a monolith, and so it's important. But it's interesting that I was like, huh, do I want to say it that same way? What do we mean when we say Black? But we went with unpacking Blackness in the diaspora. Then we're going to talk about some of the historical and contextual factors that impact Black identity development. And then we're going to touch briefly on the Black racial identity development theory and point out some issues we have with it because we don't feel it does a good service to young children, or maybe it doesn't incorporate the knowledge that we know about young children and their racial learning and their racial identity development, because most of the theories were really looking at young adults, adolescence, and adulthood thinking about it. But we know that young children, as young as 3 months old, are noticing skin color, and then they go through stages, right, where they're also engaging around race and they're being socialized around race as well too. Then we're going to talk specifically about anti-Blackness, microaggressions, and internalized racial inferiority as things that young Black children have to deal with. And then we'll talk about some practical strategies for educators and caregivers and some resources for you as well. All right, so much to uncover about Black demographics in the United States, right? So first of all, I think it's just important we start with like how many, right? There's estimated, and this was 2023, 48.3 million people in the United States identified as Black alone or in combination with another race, which is about 14.4% of the US population. So it varies usually between 12, 13, and 14%, which I think some people are shocked. Some people either think Black people are like 40% of the population, depending on where you grow up and where you live, or you think we're like 2% of the population, right? But we're actually around 14%, and we're not the largest group of minoritized people in the United States. Latinos, right, are the largest group, right? And so this is something to keep in mind, right? The rates are growing, and so that comes from the Pew Research Center. The Black population has grown approximately 33% since 2000 and includes multiracial Black individuals, including Afro-Latinos, right? People who identify as both Black and Latino. Roughly 1 in 10 Black people in the US is foreign born, with about 4.6 million Black immigrants as of 2019. So, this is where it gets really important, right? Because depending on where you are and the children that you're working with, Are they racially? They you might assume they're black, but do they identify as Black American or Black Caribbean or Black British, right? Or African, right? And so there's a very different experience that they're having, right? Whether they're perceived or treated as Black Americans or whether they are a different Black racial group or an ethnic group as well, too. And so, and that's what we're seeing currently play out in Minnesota, right? With the Somalian Americans who are visually categorized as Black, but then not experiencing life as Black Americans because of their immigration status, right? Because they're from, and most of them are Americans, right? Born in America, right? But their heritage comes from outside of the American country, right? Somalia, a country in Africa. Among Black immigrants, people of African origin now make up growing share of the foreign Black population. So now we have a lot of Black immigrants from different countries in on the continent of Africa. So Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Niger, Chad, so many, right? And so there's a huge growth of population there. The US Census data show diverse regional Black identities, including African American, Sub Saharan African, Caribbean, and other Black or African American detailed groups, right? So typically in the US, we think of Black people from the South, maybe Black people from the North, maybe Black people out West, right? But there's so much diversity within the Black people in your community, in your school, and you're going to need to find out about them, ask, inquire, learn the same way you find out if you have a family that's Italian American or Cuban American, right? You're going to have to find out and not just assume that everyone shares the same African American ethnic identity. So Black is a broad racial category, generally referring to people with African ancestry, and is used in demographic data like the census. African American commonly refers to people in the US with ancestral roots tracing back to enslaved Africans in America, though it can be used interchangeably by some individuals, right? So I identify as African American. I also identify as Black. I use them interchangeably, but I'm also living in Colombia, and there are Afro Colombians here, and I might call them Black, but I wouldn't call them Afro American, right? Because they live in Colombia. And so it's just important to know how people are using the term. Some people use the term Black to refer just to African Americans, and they might not associate that term with someone who's African, right? And some Africans don't consider themselves Black because they think that's an African American term, right? They don't know if they fit into that. So it's really important to just know that there's a lot of nuance here. And the best thing is to have opening conversations with people and accept the information that they give you, right? I think sometimes you want to press people like, where are you from? Where are your grandparents from? But you got to accept the answer someone gives you. So if you ask someone where they're from and they say I'm from Texas, then that's it. They from Texas. Don't keep pressing them like, but where your grandparents from? Or well, you have an accent, right? Like we have to accept that, but we also have to be willing to ask people, right? And just accept that the answer they give us. And this came up in a couple of the other workshops we did, especially around people who are multiracial, right? Where people want them to identify one particular racial group that they're from. Um, and so again, when we talk about the African diaspora, we're referring to people of African descent living outside of the African continent due to historic and contemporary movements, including the transatlantic slave trade and modern migration. So estimates suggest that more than 200 million people of African descent live outside of Africa. I've been looking at the numbers on this. Brazil has the largest number of Africans outside of Africa. The United States is pretty close up there. Colombia is number 5, which I was pretty shocked. I think the United States might be 2 or 3, but Brazil is number 1, right? So there's just a lot of African people living all over the world. And that's another thing that people don't always get that. When I told people I was adopting Colombian children, they assumed they weren't Black. And I was like, there are Black people in Colombia. There are Black people all over the world, right? I just had this conversation with a young Black girl from Hawaii who said she organizes the largest, like 7,000 people come out to her Juneteenth celebration. And she thought I said, I didn't know Black people were in Hawaii. I said, no, I didn't know there were 7,000 Black people in Hawaii to come to your celebration. And she said, there's more than that, but that's how many she gets to come to her event. So, Black people are all over the world, whether it's China, Japan, Russia, like all over the world, right? And we need to keep that. So that's just some statistics for you to help give you some background and context.
Denisha, before you go on to the
Yeah,
next slide, I would love to jump in. Can you go
go back.
back?
Sorry. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally, wrong way, wrong way.
No,
There we go.
wrong way. Yeah,
There
it's
we
okay.
go.
No, the one before it. Yeah, that one.
Oh, sorry. This one.
Yeah. No, no, no.
No,
Sorry.
no, no. Okay, got it, got it, got it. My screen is faster than your screen.
Exactly, exactly. And also, if you want to give me co-host, I can also help with
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
and
sure.
stuff.
I thought you were. Okay.
So, what I think is important for people to recognize is that while there is obviously this much diversity in terms of the African diaspora and how it lands here in the United States, that we know that all Black people here are not Southern born descendants of enslaved people. There is an actual reality that anti Blackness in the United States is something that then impacts everyone who's been here for more than one generation in particular. And so I don't have the actual study, but I can get it for you because I've read it before. And it says that it takes one generation of African diaspora people to be here in the United States for their children to begin experiencing the negative outcomes that Black American people do. And that is so stunning because usually immigrants come in, Black immigrants come in and do better than quote unquote American born Black people. And so it tells us something about the experience of being Black in America, whether or not you have this diversity around your own particular identity and your cultural expression, your language expression, your own ethnicity, which is different from race. But the racialization of African descended people in the United States is specific, it is entrenched, it is policy, it is behavior, it is so intense that it forces Black people, people who are perceived as Black, into these unjust and unequal systems, including young children. So I think that's a really stunning thing to really think about, that Denisha could talk for so long about this incredible diversity of people with African roots and heritage, and to know that when they spend time in the United States, it only takes one generation for them to experience what it is to be Black in America. And for those of us who have been here, the statistics are also extremely clear. We'll talk about those in a little bit, I think, in the next couple of slides.
Yes, thank you, Takima. That's super important, right? And I think, I always share that my mother's Panamanian, I was born in Panama, my mom's Panamanian, came over, and it took like, I remember her early life when I was a young girl, where she was trying to understand what it meant to be Black in America, although she's phenotypically Black, right? It's a different experience in Panama. And now in her older life, I hear her more in her like more solid in her Black identity, right?
Yeah.
When we were younger, she was trying to make sense of it, but as she got older and raised her children, it's different now, right? It was different for all of us as well
Mm.
too. Um, all right. Oh, wrong way. Come
I
on.
have a similar
There we go.
experience with my grandmother, but we'll save that for another time.
All right. Oh, I put the wrong thing in there. Okay. Great. So let's talk about some of the historical and contextual factors influencing Black identity development. So I'm going to advance to the next slide, and Takima's going to talk about the history of African enslavement and Jim Crow, and really childhood during enslavement, right? Because I think it plays a lot into a big factor into Black identity development for young children, that history, and then also Black identity development during segregation. And then I'll come back and just talk a little bit about Black culture and community and how that impacts as well too.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right, let somebody
So, one of
in
the
and get.
things that I think is important for us to realize is that you can't start now in 2026 to understand Black anything, right? You have to go back actually to the beginning of America, because the United States, excuse me, there's a couple of Americas, the United States to be more accurate and specific. The United States, everything that we have now, the way we live our lives, the injustices, the positives, the music, the social, everything is actually predicated on anti-Blackness and anti-Black racism and the subjugation of Black people. And it might sound like, huh, how? But you actually have to go back to the beginning and see how it was set up. And people were very clear. White men were very clear when they were setting up the United States and when they were enacting laws, that they were creating a class of, you know, people who have the wealth and people who don't, and their humanity is actually coded into law and then coded into institutions like schools as well, right? And so these are two images that I always share with people when I work with folks. I do a lot of work supporting people to understand what anti-Black racism is, how it plays out in schools, and how we can do something different for children in their early years. And I'm like, let us just start the first census, 1790. Now, it might be a little hard to see. I don't know if folks, can you do like a thumbs up if you're able to kind of see some of the words in there? Let's see. Hey, Kirsten. A couple people are saying, yeah. So if you look, you have. I'm going to make it a little bigger because while I'm asking you, my own glasses are failing me right now. But essentially, you have male free white males, 21 years and up. Let's see. Free males under 21. Free white females. All other persons, and then you have slaves. And so you had about 3,417 in the Southwest territory. We can't even get started talking about that. But there were about 694,000 slaves, right? They were not men, they were not women, they were not people. They were chattel, they were property of the free white males over 21 and under 21. So this is the beginning of the documentation. There's a tool where you can click on the census of many different years, and you will notice that the racial categorization changes over time. So if you can think about the census that just happened in 2020, there were many, many more categories, and they were not split between men and women. They were split between different ethnicities and well, racial groups, because now there's a whole question of like, it's Latino, it's an ethnicity, but it's coming up as a race. That's a whole interesting conversation. And so this is how Black people were always conceived of in the United States, right? People who did the work, people who were not people, right? They belonged to white men, and they were there for the service of white men as well as building wealth for white men, uncompensated labor. And so nothing about them mattered except for their ability to produce. And so we think about this in terms of people, but what I want to remind us is that how do you get to be people? How do you get to be an adult? You start out as an infant, right? So there were Black babies that were born to mothers who were picking cotton in the sun until they literally went into labor, squatted, had a baby, and put the baby on the side of the field and continued picking cotton, right? So when those infants survived and they got to be the age of 2 or 3, they were put in the fields to pick cotton. And so I want us to really think about a 2 or 3 or 4 year old that we know. Most of us here are early childhood, right? We know who they are. We know what they like to do. We know what their fingers look like, their dexterity, right? We know how their minds are creative and they want to be doing all kinds of things. And imagine a 2, 3, or 4, 5 year old Black child being in a cotton field, picking cotton, and being harmed if they didn't, and watching the harm if around them for the people that they loved, the way parenting had to be impacted by this, the way community was for them. So this is the inheritance that Black people have. And so when it came time to create schools and to create early childhood spaces, there wasn't actually a thought of let's create a space that works for them. It was like, we have to do this because the law told us. Right? There's a level of dehumanization that is a thread of the Black experience, and it begins with Black babies. And we know that Black babies don't even live to their first year at the same rate as white babies. And so this is a huge challenge. This is a picture from 1964, and every time I show people this picture, they are stunned because some people are like, I was alive then, right? Or I know people who were like, this was down in Georgia, and this was sharecropping, which was an extension of enslavement, essentially. So we can talk more about this, but let's just kind of hold this in our minds, our hearts, and our bodies as we go into thinking about some of the things Denisha is going to share with us on the next slide. Oh, wait, you're on mute.
It's important, and I think a lot of people want to think it was so long ago that we're so far removed, but we're not. We have not lived as many years outside of enslavement as we lived in enslavement. We are not there yet. We will eventually, but we're still not there yet, right? And so,
Mhm.
and then the thinking of, it's not just enslavement, it's Jim Crow too, right? And how that
Mhm.
played out. Sorry, I went too far back. All right.
That's okay.
Um, so other contextual factors that really impact Black identity development, which are coming through now in a lot of the research, right? And we're going to talk about the theory quickly, but the original theory really made it seem like Black children were just kind of, Black people, young children were just kind of like absorbing all the socialization messages, and they'd have this encounter with racism. But what they're really realizing now is that no, there's a lot happening. There's parental socialization, there's impact from the Black culture and the Black community, right? So a lot of research has been studied on parental socialization around race, and especially Black parents. And they have found that Black parents engage in lots of parental socialization around race, and that's mainly because they have to, right? They have to prepare their children for going out to schools and the public into a world where they are racialized, right, based on their race. So there's a lot happening, and it's important to understand that some parents or some children are getting a lot of pro-Black messages from their families, not all. And I like to share that as a caveat, right? Like again, if my mother's Panamanian and she's trying to make sense of what it means to be a Black woman in America, she can't really teach me what it means to be a Black woman person in America. So I wasn't getting this like pro-Black socialization as a young child because she couldn't give it to me, right? But I was being socialized around race, right? She did understand when I came home from kindergarten and wanted to know why a little white boy told me that we never had a Black president and we never would. This was, way before Obama, because I thought Thomas Jefferson was Black and I was busy coloring him in Black because, George Jefferson is Black and I probably thought Thomas Jefferson is Black. That's what I'm going with when I retell this story, right? And my mom goes, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with America, but he's right. We've never had a Black president, but that's an America thing. She knew that enough. She knew other countries weren't like that, right? But she couldn't give me more context, right? But a lot of parents are socializing, especially today, are socializing their children around having pride in their race. This is coming to you during Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, which, if you're not familiar with, it's a national movement that's in its ninth year here nationally. It started 10 years ago in Seattle, and then in Philadelphia as a one-day act of solidarity, where we're uplifting these guiding principles of the Black Lives Matter movement, such as loving engagement, diversity, globalism, trans affirming, queer affirming, Black families, Black women, unapologetically Black, disability justice, collective value, and intergenerational, right? So they're getting this, right? But we have to understand that parental socialization is happening and it's an important part of Black identity development. And you want to make sure that you are aware because sometimes kids are going to school and they're getting a completely different message about being Black than what they're getting at home, right? And so now they're being forced to discount what their parents are telling them, or they come home upset saying, our teachers are saying this about slavery, about racism, and that's not what you're telling me, right? And so it's important to recognize that we have a role to play in supporting parents, right, in this affirming Black identity in the classroom. And then also intersectionality has come into play at thinking about Black identity development as well, too. Previous theories of development, like the multiracial identity development theory, is all about intersectionality, right? Because think about it, if you're multiracial or multi-ethnic, right, so many things are going to influence how your identity develops. But it's the same thing for Black people, right? We are not a monolith, right? So your parents' social class, geography, being raised in the North versus the South, being raised in a wealthy family versus a working class family or a poor family, your gender identity, the gender identity of your family as well too, competition, sexual orientation, disability status, language, immigration status, all of these things are going to impact your socialization. So it's important that we understand it. It's not just you're Black and the world sees you as Black and you feel Black, but there's so many things that are happening. For me, the biggest awakening was when I taught at Howard University, right? So Howard University is a premier historically Black college and university in Washington, D.C., and my students all predominantly all Black, but they run the gamut, right? From local students from Washington, D.C., who are there, from students from all over the country, but who are some like their families were in the wealthy 1%, right? Like I had nothing in common with these kids because I was like, whoa, like I don't know what it's like to grow up like that, right? So I got to really see the diversity of Blackness at this institution with these group of students I taught, right? Because they came from all over the country and over the world. We had a significant international population generation also coming to Howard University, right? And I got to see that diversity in action and then think about the intersectionality that they bring with them and their experience in the classroom as well. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to Kima there about Black culture and Black community.
Yeah, there's so much. We're not going to be able to go through all of it. I was telling Denisha, I was like, this looks like a 4 hour thing, not a 1 hour, but we'll do the best we can. So, what I want to say is that in my experience, parental socialization around instilling a lot of Black pride, especially in the early years, I have seen less of that than Denisha has. I've seen that as a much more recent thing, which has, I think, come about through a lot of social media. I've
Mm,
seen people creating things that didn't exist. Like I just had a white educator who just learned about Gracie's Corner, and they were like, "This is
yeah, yeah.
amazing," and I was like, "Yeah." So I feel like creators are actually creating things that they wish had existed, and then they're showing their children, and then people are starting to kind of pick up like, oh wait, I have to actually do this at a really young age to really
Mhm.
not just tell them that they're great, but also like live that experience for young children. Like doing hair is a different experience now than it was for a lot of us when we were younger. Just all these things. And so for me, I've seen parents kind of coming in saying, I have to teach them about racism and, all the hard things. And sometimes they do that when children are so young that I'm like, why would you do that at 3? Like, no, they're not gonna watch George Floyd be murdered. Like, that's not okay ever. Like I could not watch that. I mean, I did, but I
Yeah,
couldn't. It was
yeah,
very difficult. But not recognizing what is developmentally appropriate
yeah,
about teaching children blackness, right? And teaching children about racial pride. And so I've experienced parents being confused and
yeah.
I've experienced them being filled with grief when I work with them. Because when I share with them the fact that outside of their homes and sometimes inside of our homes, because of internalized anti-blackness, Black children can often leave our spaces and go in and feel negative about being Black. And then they do experience bias. And so it's like, and I talk to them about how what you can do and like understanding that from a developmental perspective, and they feel a lot of grief, especially for their older children that they didn't do this for. So it's a very
Mhm.
complex thing, and it speaks to how important classes like this are and spaces of learning are, because we have so much to learn about history and socialization and how we've all been impacted, and we have so much practice to do around it, right? We can't practice on our kids, but we can do a lot better once we know, right? When we're educators and we have some knowledge, some support, and an ongoing commitment to keep learning and growing to do better for each, generation of children in our care, whether they're our own children or children that we're caring for. There is something else that I want to share about parental socialization. Like it's not like a nice to have kind of thing. Oh, it's great if you socialize your children positively around their own Black identity. We actually
Mhm.
have research that shows that when Black parents do positive racial socialization of their children actually do better in school, right? So all the
Yes.
metrics that and we can always question what the metrics are. Are they the best things? Are they the most important thing? But they like do better in school, better staying in school, better grades,
Yep.
better social emotional development. It's like, so it's not just like, oh, it's good if you socialize them, in positive ways. It's actually really powerful. And also, parents are not the only ones that socialize Black children,
Yes.
right? Educators socialize Black children, leaders socialize Black children, and they also are socializing children who aren't Black. And if Black people only make up 12 to 14% of the population, that means 80 something percent of people are going to internalize anti-Blackness and put that on Black children. So there's a lot of work to do with every educator and every child and every family that's not Black. Otherwise, we're fighting a losing battle here, right? So I want to say that.
No, that's super important. And I just want to add, right? So when we talk about parental racial and ethnic socialization, right, there's two parts. There's cultural socialization, which is happening for very young children, right? Instilling cultural, racial, and ethnic pride in their children. And that's been trying to happen very young, right? But then there's the preparing them for racial discrimination. But that is not happening in early childhood because it's not appropriate, right? So we always often hear about the talk, right, that Black parents have to give. That's really when they're adolescents, right? When they're getting a little bit older. And so I want to make that clear that, like, I remember teaching kindergarten in Washington, D.C., and it's Black History Month, like it is now. And I think the group of kindergarten teachers were getting together about what we were going to do. And someone's like, well, I thought about doing this lesson on slavery. And I was like, why the hell would you teach 5-year-olds about enslavement? They're like, it's Black history. I'm like,
Oh
no, no,
God.
first of
It's
all,
white
that's
history.
that's world history, white
No,
history,
that's white
US history, it's
history.
world history, right? I
Yes,
said, and
that
I was a
too.
new first year teacher, but I was like, absolutely not, right? Our
Hmm.
job during Black History Month with young children is to instill Black cultural pride in them, not to teach them about enslavement. And I always use this thing because then I thought I was off the mark. So I went to one of my good friends who's Jewish and was raised, I said, you
Hmm.
went to Hebrew school and all. When did you learn about the Holocaust? Before you learned what it meant to be Jew? Absolutely not, right?
Hmm.
Like the young part is instilling pride in who you are. Eventually, you're going to get to what happened to you and what other people did to you. But that's
Hmm.
not what young children get, right? So what did we do that kindergarten year? We talked about Black inventors. I spent the whole month, we studied and learned about different Black inventors, and they made their own inventions. Every kid in the class
Hmm.
made their own invention for
Hmm.
Black History Month as the way to instill Black cultural pride. So
Hmm.
please don't think that parental socialization is taking a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 3-year and talking to them about discrimination and racism and enslavement. Now, if you read Beverly Daniel Tatum's book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? She has a chapter, I think it's chapter 3, and she talks about her young child, right, asking questions in the grocery store, and she has to give them an answer about but she doesn't, she has to give them an answer to the question without giving them too much, right? And so,
Hmm.
yeah, if your child asks you a
Yeah.
question and you have to answer, but again, she wasn't going into a lot of detail. She wanted them to let them know that this happened a long time ago. So, like
Hmm.
before I was born, before your grandparents were born, like a long, long time ago, this something had happened and people were treated this way, and now we're doing things differently. And it was a very basic answer, but she did not get into the history of enslavement with her 4-year-old or 3-year-old at the store or, at that time, right? So just some cautions around that. And we'll have some more
Yeah.
as we're talking about it, but
Well, also,
um,
just to be clear, you can't
mhm.
talk about Black inventors if you don't talk about what Black means. You got to talk about what race is. Like, what,
Yeah,
right? Like, we
yeah.
have to keep getting more and more basic and foundational. And children are going to ask, why is that person that color? Or we're different color. That's what they're going to ask before they ask who made the telephone or who, like, I was going to say who made the cotton gin because Black people all think that Eli Whitney was Black, but he wasn't. I found
Yeah,
that out
yeah.
on social media like two Black History Months ago, and I'm like, he wasn't. No,
He
I
wasn't
don't
black,
know
right?
the cotton
Doesn't
gin,
surprise me. Yeah, yeah. And so we
but
do
yeah,
talk about blackness,
yeah, they're
right? And
gonna
I
ask
remember,
about what that
yeah,
is, right?
yeah,
That's the first
yeah.
conversation,
I
you
remember
know.
having a conversation when I was directing a preschool, and this little boy was just trying to evade sleep, and I was like rubbing his back and stuff. And so he started asking me about my skin color and stuff. And so I had to go to his mom, and when she picked him up, I said, "So your son learned a new word today called melanin," because he kept asking me why my skin was so much darker than his. And she's like, "Oh, I never thought how to answer that. Is that how you answer that?" I'm like, "Yes." Like I have a thing, something. I said, "We all have melanin. I have a lot. You have some," because he was a darker skin, not not completely like. I said, "You have some. You have less than me." And then I pointed at someone else. I'm like, "You have more than them, though, right?" And so we were talking about degrees and shades and like how it plays out. And she just was shocked because he had asked her and she didn't know what to say, right? She
Right.
didn't really have the language to say why are some people have dark skin, why are some people black, right? And so we talked about
Yeah.
melanin and then talked about Africa, the continent, and people being from that continent and having lots of melanin, and then people moving outwards and having less and less, right? And adapting, all those things. So you can have these conversations with young children, right? That are important. But it's what you say, how much knowledge you give them. And remember that they're asking you a question. They probably only want this much information. And you're thinking you
Mhm.
got to give them this much information. And we want you to remember that, right? You don't have to go deep into a lot of things.
Not
So,
at first. You
not
have
at
to have
first.
your
Eventually, you
plan for
build the
where you're
foundation.
going.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, Black identity development theory. So there are theories for every group about racial identity development. So we looked at in the other work webinars we did, we looked at all of them. I've looked at all of them because I taught a course at Sarah Lawrence College called Children, Families, and Identity. And so we spent a lot of time breaking these down. Students picked one to really delve into. I had to delve into all of them. And so it's not just something we're doing right because we're talking about Black identity. Every psychologists have looked at all groups and come up with different theories. And some of them are stages, like the stages of racial identity development have looked at for Black identity development, but not all of them are considered stages. So William Cross had this psychology of I'll never say it right, negrescence. And he was a psychologist, right? Did I get that right? Or
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
negrescence.
negrescence, right? Okay.
Mhm.
And so he originally had his theory of 5 stages of racial identity development for Black people, starting with what was known as pre-encounter. Where here it's so again, this is my challenge to psychologists and all these developmental theories, right? None of these theories that do stages, or none of them at all, really think about young children because the idea is that young children are color evasive. They don't see color, and that's not true. The research coming out today tells it differently, but all of these stages kind of start with this naive child, so pre-encounter, the dominant culture surrounds the child, and they absorb the messages about their group. And they are absorbing messages, but children are also actively constructing knowledge about race. They actively construct knowledge about everything, and they're actively constructing knowledge about race and skin color and all of these things. And so they're going through their own stages as well. So back to CrossFit stages, the second stage was called encounter. And so this was when he argued that there was an experience or group experience that caused the child to become aware of the impact of racism on their life, right? And so it was like they were not really paying attention until something happened. Jackson's theory slightly changed that, right? Jackson's theory wants to bring in the fact that there's a lot more happening, although they also start with this naive stage, the absence of social conscious or identity, which they claim is the early years, up to 3 years old. But we also know that's not true. So the research that I recently looked at in a paper that I recently published talks about children as young as 3 months. Um, Being aware of racial, like, so they do these studies on them. They can discriminate between races based on face, right? So they can show the first, it starts their own race. And they did these studies on African children. They did a group of Israeli children, like kids who were in different groups in different places in the world and saw different races of people. And they were able to see how long they engaged with the photo, like tracking their eye movements. And they could see that by 3 months old, they could discriminate against pictures of people who had the same race as them and their family, right? And they also use like photos of people, and then they use like blank dolls to see if that was like right, like if it was just a photo that was throwing them off. So we know that
Tanisha,
children are aware.
just one
Mhm.
sec. I think it's
Sure.
one they differentiated. They weren't discriminating.
Differentiate.
They
Yes.
weren't
No,
being
no, they
like
do.
one is better than the other,
No, no,
right?
no, no, no.
Okay.
There's no
They
input on that. I'm
noticed.
sorry. Yeah, no, they
It's okay.
noticed that how long they pay attention. And
Right.
so the longer they pay attention, they were able to, did I say discriminate between or
Yeah.
differentiate?
It's
Differentiate
okay. It makes
between,
sense
yeah,
that you
yeah.
would.
Yeah, absolutely. No, no, we don't want people to think everyone every time I do this stuff, people are like, so are you telling me that little children are racist? And I crack
Babies.
up
Yeah.
because babies, right? And it's funny,
Yeah.
even my friends who had two little girls and when, they go through a phase where children go through that phase where it's like stranger danger. So when they're really young, anyone can hold them, but then they get to this point where they're like, don't touch me, I don't know you. So
Yeah.
they're kids at that point, and then, and I was like, it's fine, I know babies do this. And then it changed, and they were like, oh God, thank God, we thought she was going to be racist. And I'm like, babies aren't racist, right? It's called stranger danger. Like she didn't know me, and I was a stranger, and she didn't want me around. And then once she got comfortable with me, right? But she's like, it wasn't like that when they were a baby. I'm like, because she's a baby and she can't tell, right? It took time for her to develop that, be able to uh, tell the difference between people, right? And it's just, yeah. But no, none of this is talking about children being racist, but children are engaging in racial learning. And as they proceed and get older, right, they are showing evidence of bias and prejudice. There is a point between 5 and 6 year olds where they will actually start assigning meaning based on race. When they're younger, they're just aware of it. They notice racial markers, they notice skin tones and things like that. There is a bias in young children, both black and white, a pro-white bias for friendships and things like that, which shifts for black children and stays higher for white children. But it's not till about 6 or 7 where they start to see evidence of like assigning quality to based on race, right? Where they're still, but they're not doing that when they're very young. And a lot of that is based on the socialization that they're seeing. So we just want
Mhm.
to point out with the theories that these are the stages that folks are going through, and we want you to take it with care, right? Because no,
Mhm.
it's not like, oh, you're in this stage or you're not. I remember being at college, and you can definitely tell when freshmen and sophomores are kind of like in the immersion stage, or even the resistance stage, where they're trying to a redefinition, right? They're trying to shed a lot of the socialization they had and reclaim a different part of identity. But everybody, we can't be sure someone's in one of these stages, right? This is just information that's important to have, and to know that people are experiencing their racial identity development in multiple ways. And as I said in the other webinars, and we say in the framework, racial identity is about two things, right? One, it's internally constructed, how you come to see yourself as a member of a racial, ethnic, and cultural group, but it's also externally imposed, how others see you and the meaning they assign to you. And so, what you're grappling with as a child are both of those things, right? How
Mhm.
you come to see yourself, but then what are other people saying about you, and what does that mean? And so, as children get older and they're taking in these messages, right, they're trying to make sense of those two things, right? And everyone is at some point in their life. Some people are oblivious or not really thinking about it because maybe other parts of their identity are more important, right? That's when the intersectionality comes in. Maybe they're more focused on their gender or other things, right? And they're not thinking so much in terms about race. But at some point, folks do think about this, and they're also being socialized by other factors, right? Family, media, school, teachers, society, culture, right? History. All of these things are also playing into effect. So we'll leave you there with a high level on the Black identity development theory. I do include the link to this article, the Jackson article, that has talks about both models, but Jackson's model is really prominent in case you want to read more about it. And there's also research. I'll actually include my article that just recently got published because I summarized some of the research. And I just found another article that they were looking specifically about racial identity development in early childhood, focused on Black children as well, too. So I'll share
Mm.
that one as well.
Nice.
All right, Takima is going to take it over here. And I love these photos.
Well, so I have created a curriculum and experience called Journey to Nia, centering Black joy and eradicating anti-Black racism in early childhood. And so it's exactly, I like put everything it is in the title so there would be no confusion. There is a lot of Black joy and a lot of focus on young Black children and what they come to us, what is their actual right when they are born to be beautiful, to be loved, held, to be creative, to smile, to have all the emotions, to be their full and complete selves in every aspect of their identity, including their Black racial identities. And so I use images to really evoke that feeling and that to reinforce that belief for everyone. And so I just want you to take a moment. We've been going through a lot in a short amount of time, and I just would invite you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Look at each one of these babies and let it out. And just think about what is the commitment we are making by being here to each and every one of these Black children, to all the Black children that have been in your lives before this moment and all that will come, whether it's through your work, your family, your community. This is why we're here right now. This is why Denisha and I are doing this work. So just pop into the chat what words come to your heart as you look at this image of these Black children. Thank you, Julia. Gratitude. What else? Joy with an exclamation point. Thank you, Julia. Julie. Sunshine, Kirsten. Love, says Christine. Pride. What else? Give me one more. Oh, I love the silence and waiting. Innocence and silliness. Absolutely. Thank you. So let us move on to the next slide as we take all of these feelings in this image with us forward. And so, what do you think Black children need to thrive and be joyful in early childhood? What do you think they need? You came here to get some ideas from us, but what do you think they need? Thank you, Seleni. You see that they're bright. What do you think they need? If someone would like to unmute, I think we can handle that. Do you think we can, Denisha?
Yeah, you can definitely unmute. Yeah,
Okay. So we can use the chat and unmute.
yeah,
So
yeah.
great.
You want me to read out the chat or you got it?
Yeah, you can read out the chat.
Okay, so we had Bright on unconditional love
Mhm,
from Lucina, and Christine said a safe space.
mhm.
And Selene, I hope I said that right, says I think Black children need more love.
Thank you. We
Yeah.
could really think about going deep on what each of those things, unconditional love,
Hmm.
safe space, what does that really mean? And more love. Absolutely. What happens when you love someone, when you love a child, right? What does that look like and feel like and sound like? How do you create your classroom environments? How does your mind look when you love Black children?
Julia said recognition and affirmation of individual gifts.
Hmm.
And ooh, this is a
Hmm.
mm, how do you want to say
Is
this?
it okay if I speak?
Yeah, yeah, please go
Yes.
Oh,
ahead.
this is Selene.
Selene.
Them,
Okay.
them getting that love, with I think it would bring more confidence to them because not many, well, I wouldn't say that, but not many teachers know how to uplift certain children. So yeah, that's what I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does. No,
yeah.
it does. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
And
just
thank
think it would help them along the way,
Hmm.
yeah,
to
absolutely.
become someone amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
And Jaleem, thank you for telling us how you say
Yes,
your
and
name.
I'm
I
glad
love that
yeah, they put it right in
correction.
there.
Yes,
Jalím said,
Jaleem.
I think they need more support and representation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Yvonne said, I think love, compassion, and safety most importantly.
Yeah. We could really dig into each of these things because what you've said here is actually what all children need to thrive in early childhood, right? This is not specific to Black children. However, you're saying these things because we actually know that Black children don't automatically have access to these things, right? Black children are not automatically safe in early childhood when we know that they are 3.1 times more likely to be suspended from preschool than their white counterparts. That doesn't speak to safety, right? They are more likely to be excluded, meaning you stay in the office with the director while we have our regular class over here. Um, they are more likely to have parents called and say, you've got to take them home. They don't belong here. This isn't the right environment for them, right? None of those are safe spaces. Even just removing them from the carpet area, go sit over there until you can get yourself together, right? So, just to be clear, educators need support. This isn't about blaming educators. This is about educators who go through an entire master's degree program or a bachelor's degree program or a high school, whatever you had to do to get into the classroom, and nobody takes a single course or has a single workshop on how do you support Black children. But what you will hear just kind of floating around are these negative statistics about Black children. The one I just told you. You'll notice that although Black people only make up 12 to 14% of the population, when you look at every measure of health and wellness, Black people are at the bottom, right? And so, what I tell people is that we've got a racially specific problem that is due to racism because we know race doesn't exist, right? Y'all are clear. Biologically, race is something that white men in Europe made up, right? So biologically, there are no races. So why would it be that Black people, race doesn't exist, but then we're at the bottom of everything? Right? Our children, our adults, Black women die in pregnancy, right? Do you see all the negative things? And then the positive things were at the lowest, right? But race doesn't exist. So that's a societal, systemic, historic, an entrenched problem that Black children are coming into the space with. So we have a racially specific problem. We have to have a racially specific solution, right? We've got to put the spotlight on, like we're doing tonight, and say, what do Black children actually need? Who are they? What do I need to learn and unlearn about what I'm doing and how I'm showing up in the classroom? What do I know about my own white identity development? When are you doing that one?
March 16th and
March
17th, I believe.
16th. Everybody should be at that one. White
Yeah.
racial identity development theory is what helped me move through my own Black racial identity development in college. That's a whole nother story. I work with Dr. Cross. I work with Dr. Tatum. My thesis in college was on five white women's racial identity development in the multicultural education course. So we could talk about that a lot. So what do we know about our own identities and how is it impacting what we know and what we learn and how we show up for Black children? So I want us to keep thinking about this because there are lots of things we can do, but we have to start here. What do they need? What do the children in front of me need? What do in general Black children need? And how do I begin to walk that path of really supporting them?
Oh,
I think we have
absolutely.
one
Love
more.
it.
The next one is the what you can do, right?
Yeah, let me see. Hold on.
Okay.
Keep losing my, where are we at here? Advance, advance, advance. Okay. How far is that? Yeah, one too many. Okay. No, the next one
Oh,
is just talking about these three
oh
things. Yeah.
gosh. Okay.
Anti-Blackness, microaggressions, and internalized racial inferiority. I'm not going to go too much into them, just some things to
Right.
be aware of because they're happening in these spaces, right? So I'll just go quickly. In the framework, we talk about two things that are like we're talking about fostering healthy identity development, and we're not just talking about Black children, we're talking about all children. So we talk about two things that you might see in children, right? You might see racial superiority, right? White children typically evidencing racial superiority, and then racial inferiority, internalized racial inferiority. And so internalize both of them, but one, and this happens, right? And lots of different children, not just Black children, right? So there are some statements that sometimes that you might hear kids make that will clue you into this, right? Dismissing their own physical appearance, devaluing cultural practices, rejecting their hair texture or style, assuming they're less capable, or believing they don't belong, right? So hearing kids say, I don't want my skin to be this dark, or I wish I was lighter. A child might express dissatisfaction with their skin tone, reflecting internalized preferences for lighter skin, often seen as societal standards of beauty, or they might be playing by themselves because other kids said, you too dark, you can't play with us, right? A lot of children with dark skin have experienced that kind of shunning from other kids, right? You think they're playing by themselves because they're antisocial, and it's no, they might have actually been rejected by the other kids as well. Around ethnicity and culture, children who are shamed for don't want to bring their food from home because other kids are making fun of it, saying it's weird or it smells funny, or wishing that their hair. And this is, again, lots of people like girls who have curly hair wish they have straight hair, and girls who have straight hair wish they have curly hair. But Black hair has been policed and stigmatized and used to discriminate against Black people for many, many years, right? And so Black hair is very cultural, and often Black kids come into schools with their hairs done in ways that are, representative of who they are and their culture. And some child will make a negative comment or say something bad about it, whether it's locks or curls or Afro puffs or something that they have going on. And so it's important to recognize that that's happening and how can you interrupt that, and make sure that you have cultural materials that are affirming. Make sure that we know it's not okay to touch Black people's hair. We are not animals in a petting zoo, right? Whether they're a child, whether they're an adult, it doesn't matter. Whether it's an 87-year-old woman, whether it's whatever, right? We have to teach people to respect people's boundaries and that we don't touch people's hair without their permission. And how do we help kids understand that hair is different, but it's also very important, right? Not to diminish it as well, too. So we talk about this in the framework. We talk about things you can do to address racial inferiority talk, right? Validating feelings, affirming identity, making sure there's representation, creating those safe spaces, and modeling attitude. And then there's also anti-Blackness and microaggressions, and I'll let Takima talk a bit about anti-Blackness before we move on.
yeah, so this is so much. I mean, we really could spend a lot of time going, and we should, going into each thing. So I encourage you all to connect with myself, with Denisha, DEY, and other folks doing this work, because once we really put it all together, then we can feel really empowered on how to move past it and work through it in our own work. But so anti-blackness I've defined as the history of enslavement and its legacy, which is now encoded as anti-black racism. It's experienced by black people and black children in personal, institutional, systemic, and internalized ways. And when I say black people, I'm referring to black people of the diaspora who are seen as and racialized as black here in the United States. So it can be powerful just to kind of pull out some of the words in or phrases in that definition. So if you want to pop any of those into the chat, just kind of what stands out to you in that definition of anti-black racism. You can pop that into the chat. Let's see what you come up with. It is 7:59. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm gonna actually move forward because I think Denisha has like three more slides to get through. But I will tell you that what usually people come up with is like history, legacy, encoded, personal, institutional, systemic, right? Like it's in all the ways. It's not anti-black racism isn't just about someone or in people saying, "Oh, like I think of you negatively as a black person," or even a black child saying that about themselves. It is literally in every institution, which connects to make anti-blackness a systemic thing. So we could explore that in a future conversation. But Tanisha, did you want to say anything else about this slide?
Yeah, so just also understanding microaggressions because I think the term gets used a lot and people think micro meaning small, but that's not it, right? So I love this definition, a term used for brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative prejudicial slights and insults towards any group, particularly culturally marginalized groups, right? So it's micro in the sense that it's not lighting across on burning across on someone's lawn, right? It's not spray painting the N-word on someone's stuff, right? It's micro in the sense that it's common. It's really these small things people say and do, but it's not micro in the impact, right, of how it's accepted, right? So what is the most common one for someone? For me, you speak so well. You sound so for what? Like what am I? I'm grew up in America. What am I supposed to sound like? It's like a compliment, but it's an insult, right? It's this idea that you are being signaled that you have mastered white man's English so well that you deserve praise, unlike the rest of your people who have not, right? It's common. It happens all the time. People are trying to say something positive, but they're actually not. They're saying so. That's one, right? That I experienced in a lot of other people, especially immigrants will hear that a lot of times. Oh, you speak the language so well, or where are you from, or you're so educated. Or you'll get, if you're in a predominantly white space with a few black people, and this is what I used to think was a great thing to hear before I ascended through my stages of black identity development, you're not really black. You're not really black, right? Because it was this idea that, they didn't see me the way they see other black people. There was something about me. I was special. I was different. And I thought that was the goal until I realized that that was not. That was a microaggression that I experienced all the time. I met white people throughout the many years I grew up in the state of New Jersey. Like it happened all the time, to the point where I had to stop saying, like, don't say that. That's an insult. Cut them off before they say it, right? So young children are hearing microaggressions too. And I think it's really happening with black children is that, we look at those photos and we're like, oh, they're so cute and they're so beautiful and they're so innocent. But you have to remember that as black children get older, they're no longer seen as cute and beautiful and innocent, right? There is a stage, and it happens way before like middle childhood for white kids, right? Where they lose, they lose their childhoodness. They're not seen as children. They're seen as black people, right? And so that's happening, and then these microaggressions are happening on top of that, and it's impacting their socialization. And so it could be happening in your program, right? Other adults could be saying things who don't realize they're saying it, but they're doing it, right? And so it's important to be aware and to gently call it out, right? But you have to, clear that's not something that's not coming off in a good way, right? What you're saying is actually kind of insulting and helping people to see through that. All right. So, lastly, we just have some practical strategies for educators and caregivers that we want to share with you. So, again, using specific affirming language, right? Name race and identity clearly and positively. Avoid silence or vague language when children notice difference. I loved one of Vivian Paley's first books was called White Teacher, and she really unpacks what's happening. She's in Chicago. She's at an integrated school, and these white teachers think they're doing so great because they integrated and the black parents were like, yeah, no, it's not great. And they were all kind of like taken aback. And then she's like, well, let me think about it. Let me reflect. And she realized when racial issues came up, she was silent as silent could be. She didn't know what to say because she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. But children learn from your silence. They learn it's okay, right, for people to say things or that we don't talk about that. So naming race and identity clearly, it's okay. I've had white people, I don't know if I can say black. Yes, you can say black as long as you're not saying it in a derogatory way. If you want to say African American, say African American, right? But naming it and not just ignoring it or hiding it, and being clear that we're talking, all right, about people and then talking about systems, right, as well too. Talking about race and racism is something that happens to people, right, but not who they are. It's not that like because you're black, you're experiencing racism is bad. Being black is not, right? We want children to have love and pride for who they are and not for the systems that are oppressing them, whether it's, racism or classism or sexism or any of the isms. Reflect Black diversity in everyday materials, including books, images, music, and play materials that represent many Black cultures, family structures, skin tones, and hair textures, and not only during special months, right? Yes, this is Black History Month, it's Black Lives Matter School Week of Action. We're talking about this, but it needs to happen all year long because children are going to feel like, oh, it's one of those months where we talk about that group, right? But if you're talking about this and you're doing this all throughout the school year, then they're going to accept it as normal, right? That blackness is everywhere and it's okay to have Black diversity. Also, really a quick note about books, and I'll put these in the resources. There were some book lists. It was called 30 books about Black children that are not about basketballs, boycotts, and buses, right? We need to get out of this idea that the books about Black children have to be about civil rights or sports, or yeah, some other thing. We want ordinary or Black kids being ordinary Black kids in books that are not even about being Black, right? The same thing. Every group talks about this, right? Like you want disability prominent in a book. You want a book about children engaging in something, and there just happens to be a kid in a wheelchair, and it's not about the kid in the wheelchair. It's that the kid is in a wheelchair, and so that's a normal part. So we want to look for books that depict ordinary Black kids as part of the story, as part of a main character, and not just focus hyper on the fact that they're Black, or right, or think there are some great stories for history that we want to include, but that shouldn't be the only representation that you have of Black children in books is about civil rights movements, right, or sports or something like that. Honor family knowledge and self definition. Asking families how they describe their identities and what matters to them is super important. Follow their lead rather than assuming, right? And so that's when you can really get to know your families. And I feel like we're great at doing this. When if you found out you had a family coming to your program from Germany, you would want to find out a lot about German culture and what you can bring in the class and how to say a few words and all of this stuff. But when you find out they're the new Black kid coming to your school, it's like none of that is taken into account, right? But you don't know this child, you don't know their family, and you should just be finding out everything about them the same way you would do about another child, right? Interrupting bias in the moment is also important. Respond calmly and clearly to bias statements or behaviors, naming what's unfair and reaffirming belonging, right? I think in the past it used to be people didn't know what to say. They might rush to console the child who was, the direct receiving that kind of statement, right? But not really say anything to the kid who did it. But you want to just, I clearly will hear things. My kids even now say things, and I'm like, whoa, 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 why you gotta say that about the Black person? Right? And they're like, Mom, you're so sensitive, and I'm like, yes, I am because this is what I do for a living, right? And they think it's funny, right? But even with young kids, you might hear something. I remember a kid saying, I don't want chocolate milk. I'll end up dark like you. And I'm like, oh, that's so cute. You think that. But guess who hasn't drank milk since she was 2 years old? This girl. So if I'm not drinking milk, how do you think I got this skin color? It's not the chocolate milk, I promise you, right? And so that's just a regular conversation. But if I heard kids saying something to someone, I'd be like, friend, what I hear you saying is really hurting my heart. Let's talk about this, right? If it's hurting my heart, can you imagine how it's hurting their heart? Let's talk about this, right? And you can say these things, but you want to interrupt it so that it doesn't go unspoken and so that kids don't get the message that we don't talk about race, that it's taboo, right? And that it's not polite and that we shouldn't say anything. We want to support identity through play and expression, allow children to explore identity through dramatic play, art, storytelling, and movement without correction or adult agendas. One of the scenarios we have in the framework is a boy painting a picture and he's saying how proud he is that he's black. And the teacher's like, oh, it's okay. You're just a boy. Like she's trying to downplay the fact that he's prideful about his skin color. And so the idea is that that's, like we should support children's expression of who they are in their art and in their play. And also watch out that in play, unfortunately, is where a lot of children are experiencing racial discrimination from other kids, right? That racial superiority and inferiority comes out a lot in play. So we want to be aware of that. And then examine adult expectations and discipline, reflect on whether Black children are being held to different behavioral standards or interpret it through deficit lens, as Takima mentioned, right? And I've talked about it's a prominent thing that happens all the time. I remember a great book. I had my students read a chapter. I think it was Milner is his last name, and I'm blanking on his first name. Is it Richard Milner the fourth? Maybe he's a book, and he's talking about being in a preschool. I think he was thinking about bringing his kid there, and these group of boys are talking, and the adult teacher's talking to him, and she hears all the boys' voices, but she constantly keeps calling on the black boy. Your voice is too loud, and he's like, he's not the only one talking, but that's the only voice she can hear. She doesn't hear the other white boys at the same level as he, and she's constantly signaling him out, right? And he noticed, I mean, what does that send message to the other kids, right? That his voice is the problem. Not that the boys are talking, but that he's specifically talking, right? And so those things tend to go unexamined and unnoticed. And I share those with students who are studying, to become teachers so that they can be aware of it, right? Like, how are we signaling that certain kids are being signaled out while others aren't, right? And a lot of it tends to be around race and around gender as well, too.
So all of the strategies that Denisha mentioned are really, really powerful and important, and there are more of them as well. I actually think we need to start with this, which, as you can tell, is professional development for people, professional development, coaching, in person, virtual, whatever it is. We have to create spaces for ourselves as educators and teacher educators to work through all of this because it's a lot and we have a journey to go through it, and it's really helpful to go through it with someone supporting us as well as being able to support each other. So this is an image from the Journey to Nia retreat that I hosted in 2024, and this is a mixed group of BMCC students. I know two of you are on here. I see you, Jen. um, a private preschool co-op teacher is in this group. There are people from the DOE, a kindergarten teacher. There was an early childhood educator as well. There was someone who actually isn't in early childhood education at all, but is interested in doing some work around Black women and hair. And so she wanted to come to this session as well. And we spent an entire day going through a lot of content, a lot of emotions, working through them. And then we spent the afternoon exploring in an African Center preschool downstairs, which is in Brooklyn. It's been around for over 40 years. And so they were able to take the theory, work through that, and then go and look at what it looks like in practice to really and truly support Black children in their earliest of years. And they cried multiple times throughout the day because that's what you have to do to work through all of this. And then when we were ending the day at 5 o'clock on a Saturday, everyone said, we could do this for a week. Like, can we do more? Can we have a second day? Like, we just got started. And I was like, I know. So I'm just sharing this with you because I do want you to recognize what a commitment it is to actually deconstruct anti-Black racism in ourselves so that we can do it for young children. But it is so worth it, as you can see, thinking back to that picture of those beautiful faces that we saw. So this is a bit of a bigger picture of the group. There is one more thing. You can't tell what's on the screen right there, but I will tell you what it is. I created something called a map of power and exclusion. because all the work that I've been doing with folks and my own conceptualization and research and reading, and I felt like these identity wheels didn't quite fit what made sense for me. So I made one up and then ended up copywriting it. And then I've shown it to people all across the country and people from other countries as well. And everyone's like, this makes so much sense. And this is the best, like, sort of conceptualization of identity and oppression in America that I've ever seen in my life. And then they apply it to their own countries if they're not from there. And so for anti-Black racism, for Journey to Nia, I have my own map. Like I pulled out and like made it specific. So we look at race, gender, we look at hair texture, body size, complexion, and names. And we
Mm,
work through how we can have access to more power and more exclusion as Black people, right? And so we start to look at there's actual laws in place, there are interpersonal dynamics. If you are Black American, you might have heard the term good hair versus bad hair. If you are Afro Latino, you might have heard pelo malo or pelo bueno, right? Like, so we start to really look at these things and look at how it creates intersectional oppression, but also the opportunity for intersectional freedom for Black people and Black children. And what is so important to me is we start this when children are young. Like, right, if you give them the foundation, you know that they're going to have a beautiful life, right? All the things, the reading, the social emotional, the language, the art, all of those things, the foundation gets set when they're very young. So why not give them the best possible opportunity to have a strong, positive, and healthy racial identity and racial socialization so that they can have a strong, healthy life? That is involving also the adults who are in their lives, right? Because they're not in isolation. So my thing is like, I want to work myself out of a job in like years to come. I won't be here to see the full benefit of it, but I believe I do the work, you do the work, your children do the work, your children's children do the work, and then in 7 generations we're going to have no anti-Black racism. How about that?
I love it. I love it. Awesome, awesome,
Mhm.
awesome. So we end with a final call to action, and you're going to find this in your reflective workbook. And so, affirming Black identity in the early years is not about having the perfect words. It's about showing up consistently, honestly, and courageously. Black children are watching how adults respond to difference, dignity, and injustice. When we expand our understanding of Blackness, ground ourselves in history, and act with intention, we help create environments where Black children can develop a strong sense of self, belonging, and joy. Your work matters. Start with reflection, follow with action, and keep learning alongside the children you support. We started this just jumping into affirming Black identity, but the framework that we build this on starts with unpacking your own socialization and your own identity development. There's a lot of self work that you have to do. And just like Takima mentioned in her workshop, they have to do it themselves, right? And we ask you to look at your social identity. I would love to put your stuff in the framework because we use the social identity list that's probably not working out too well. So maybe when we redo it, we can somehow include
Yeah,
your work and credit you and put that in the
yeah.
framework next. But we do look at social identities and socialization
Yep.
for ourselves because how you were socialized around race, ethnicity, and culture matters. And before you
Mhm.
can do this work, you got to unpack all that. So we invite you to start with that reflection, start with yourself, and then really make the commitments, right? That you're going to address it. And know you're not going to be perfect. And know you're going to say things. And someone, might take it the wrong way, or it might not come out the right way. And that's okay. You're learning, right? I still go through this as I'm learning to be an ally to my trans brothers and sisters. I still make mistakes, right? And that's okay. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm getting there and I'm trying and I'm committed to their liberation because it's bound up in mine. So I'm going to do whatever the work takes, right? And so that's where we have to be if you're doing this work as a non-Black person as well, too. So lots of resources. You can scan the QR code there for the Padlet. I'm also going to email it to you tomorrow with the recording link. Embrace race. Such a wonderful organization. If you're not familiar with the work they do, it's so great. So when you click on this on the PDF, it's going to bring you to one action guide. I actually put three more in the Padlet because there's just so many. But they
Mhm.
have in every session that I've done, I've included a resource from Embrace Race, right? Because I think they have a parenting Asian American toolkit. They had two-part webinars on multiracial identity. They have general resources on how to talk with children about race. They have a resource for white parents with white children, how to make them what do they call it?
Race
Brave,
conscious
brave,
or
yeah, race or brave something, brave spaces, brave conversations. Yes, but make
oh,
them
right,
race
right.
conscious,
Yeah.
all right? But they
Hmm.
use the word brave in there somehow too with those kids as well. So tons of resources, really great organization, all free. They do have workshops and other things. And then I'm going to let Takema tell you about her two resources, which are also in the Padlet.
Yeah, definitely. And Kirsten already gave the preview, but
Yeah.
on Saturday, February 28th, I can't wait to be at BMCC from 10 to 1. Registration's at 9:30. And it's going to be focusing on early childhood, but through adolescence, we're going to make a clear delineation because there'll be students from the childhood program there as well. It's actually open to the public. I think we have space for 90 people. So I cannot wait. In person is a whole other vibe. I'm just you wait, okay? Caffeinated tequila with materials and everything's interactive. We're gonna be moving, moving, grooving, vibing, and sliding, as one of my Instagram people that I follow likes to say. But there's gonna be a lot of learning, and I'm really excited to bring that to BMCC. And then on Thursday is going to be the beginning of a cohort that I'm putting together. I've been doing a lot of workshops, a lot of trainings, and I am just at a place where I need to be seeing people on a regular basis who are working on this together. It feeds me, and I need that in this moment. And so I'm hosting a cohort. Christine was at my workshops in January, and she's on this right now. So on Thursday, every other Thursday for the next couple of months, we are meeting. We are going to talk. We're going to take one concept. We're going to go through a little bit of what is this, what's the history, what makes sense, all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to spend time talking to each other and thinking about how do we work with it in our own lives, right? How do we become a community to keep moving through to make sure that Black children are supported. And so both of those flyers, I believe, are going to be in the resources Padlet as well, right, Tanisha?
Yes, they both are. And I'm coming back to share the
Yeah,
screen. I just updated
that's
it
okay.
and added one more quick
Yeah.
slide, so I had to
And you
stop
can
doing that, but
always
I'm coming
reach
right
out
back.
to me if you want to have like a 30-minute conversation. If you just email info@anasa.com, I'll put it in the chat. I just am really I'm really, really big on community because without us, we have nothing. And so feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you want to bring me someplace to talk with folks. I do a lot of outward facing professional development, but I also do coaching, leadership, coaching for folks in early childhood and nonprofit academia as well, and like consultation stuff too. Because if people have programs and they're like, "Oh, I don't quite know," and I'm like, let's sit down and look at the program. So I can do that stuff on the back end as well. So just reach out.
Absolutely. And Takima's work is fabulous. Also, DEY is here to offer work as well. This course is one of them, but you can reach out as well if you want more work on the framework. The framework you can download, of course, but if you want to do any professional development around that, we are here to make that happen for you. So, again, you can scan the reflective workbook. There are questions for each of the sections on what we covered. And just to let you know, it is March 16th. Affirming Healthy White Identity in the Early Years is our last workshop, led by myself and Kirsten Cole, who is here, I believe, or was here.
Yay!
So Kirsten's going to do that one with us. I'm really excited. And then I just had to add this slide because I forgot.
What?
We got Kirsten doing two things for us. So on February 24th is our book talk for her new book, Teaching for Love and Justice, Learning About Race and Racism Alongside Young Children. I wrote the quote down there on there. I got to write a blurb for the book, so I got to read it, and I thought it was fabulous. And decided, yeah, we were gonna talk about this book. So this is free and open to all. You can register. There's the bit.ly February book talk. You can also go to the DEY page and you'll find all about it as well. The healthy affirming healthy white identity is part of the subscription. So $8 a month, and you can just join for 1 month and cancel. You get access to that as well too on March 16th. So we hope you'll consider subscribing. We'll send you the links with everything as well too. But this is free and open for all, and we hope you will join us for that as well too.
I
All
want to
right.
say one more thing.
Yes, go ahead.
I want people to know how important it is to actually understand all of these identities, right? Like if you're white and you only go to the white, or if you're black, you only go to, like, actually understanding all of these identity frameworks is really, really powerful, and it makes a lot of things click. It also sets the foundation for really understanding intersectionality, because you can swap out essentially race and put class background, right? You can kind of swap out and put religious identity. Like it's not exactly the same, but there is a process of moving through these identities that is really powerful for us to know about, not just our own identities, but like all identities. So I would encourage people to come to all of the workshops. And don't sign up for $8 and then cancel, Denisha. That's not really good. That's not how you're supposed to run. Sign up for
You're
eight
like,
dollars
why?
and
Why
stay.
would you say something like that?
There's
I know.
more
Make sure that
amazing
there's
things.
more. Actually, yes. So not only do you get access to
Right.
everything, but you'll also there's new courses being developed. So if you're familiar with Keisha Reed, who's an amazing early childhood educator, she's developing our next course, and I'm not
Mhm.
sure all the details yet, but I'm going to share that with you as soon as I get it from her. So yes, we
There you
want you
go.
to stay for $8 a month. But but definitely join for that one so that you can attend that. But yes, you get access to all of them. All of the recordings are there for all the other discussions and the reflective workbooks and all of the resources as well too.
Amazing.
And then I just want to end. It is the Black Lives Matter School Week of Action. This is our calendar for national. We look at all of the guiding principles, but we're also highlighting loving engagement and globalism this year. And so there are different events coming out. I just recorded the families panel interview, so that was recorded yesterday. A diverse family panel. It's going to be shown on Thursday. On Friday, we're having a great celebrating with Brian Jones, the historian in New York City. His book, Black History is for Everybody. There's going to be a great discussion with him on Friday. Other events as well too. So I invite you to check it out. The website is black. Oh, we can't see it because of your
I
background. Bring
know,
it
but
closer. There it goes. Oh
is
yeah,
that it?
I have
That's
it too
his book.
somewhere. That's his book. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
can't see it.
and
Oh wait, there it
yeah,
is.
oh, there it is. There it is. Yep. Black History is for
Right
everyone.
next to
Perfect.
me.
Yeah. And so please go to the website, blacklivesmatteratschool.com. You can find all the events locally, New York City. For those of you in New York City, there's a group of people organizing and doing events as well too. There's a student creative challenge where we have prompts around the principles where students can create art and submit it, and we will showcase that art later this month when we do a unapologetically Black Day for Audre Lorde and Toni Morrison's birthday.
Mm.
So lots of different ways that you can celebrate and participate. There's another event on Thursday for Defending the Early Years that we're partnering with Rethinking Schools and Penguin Random House. There's a book called Main Street, a community book about redlining. So this little girl learns about redlining and her history and her community. And so we're going to have the authors. I'm going to be a guest on that, and we're going to be talking about that as well. And you can find all this information on our website and on their website to register as well too. Now I think we're done. I'm like, how many more slides am I
I
going to add?
know. Are
Two
there
more.
questions?
Oh,
Are
that's
there
right. Questions. We got a couple more minutes. I forgot
questions
all
or
about that.
comments also?
Yes. Yeah. We'll keep recording, you're
Yeah.
welcome to jump in, come off mute if you have a question, or put it in the chat while I drop some links in there.
Question, comment, reflection.
You let me know if something pops up. I'm looking at another screen right
Hmm.
now. I'm trying to get a link.
Lucina says very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucina. We're
What's
so
your best
happy.
takeaway, Lucina? We would love to hear.
Lots of questions.
It's always so
Right.
fun how shy people get on online.
What's the name of the art? What did it say? Sorry.
The art
Go back
contest
up.
that kids.
Yes, it's called the Student Creative Challenge, and I will drop a link in here. So first of all, this is the link to register for Kirsten
Mm-hmm.
Cole's book talk on February 24th. That's that Zoom registration link that I just popped in there.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will share. So it's called the Student Creative Challenge, which we do every year for Black Lives Matter at school, and we do a different prompt every year. So I'm going to drop the link to the
Mm-hmm.
web page where this is all at. The prompts are a little bit long, but again, we're focusing on globalism and loving engagement. So there are three prompts that they can respond to. What do schools rooted in loving engagement look like? What can we do to advance justice, peace, liberation in our communities and abroad? And here's the link. And then the last one is how can we deepen our commitment to the global Black family? So a lot of times art teachers lead these with their students, but individual students can do them too. You don't have to be, part of an art class, but just an opportunity for students to respond creatively. This is the first semester I'm not teaching my integrated art course at Howard University, and so I always made my students do it every year, and I'm super sad because I won't see their art. It was like my favorite project where they would all respond to the prompt, and I would look at their art and read the reflection paper, and it was such a
Hey,
cool
Denisha, there was
experience.
something in the chat too.
Yes.
Suzanne said, grateful for this offering. I appreciate that piece about answering only the questions kids ask instead of overloading them with information. Kids know what they need to know. Yeah, it's funny because I do, a lot of work with folks around race and racism and all of this. And usually I say the simplest thing back to preschool people. They're like, I don't know what to say when they ask me. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what happens when they ask you a question that you're not quite sure to answer? Like, what do you say? And they
Yeah.
go, what do you think? And I'm like, yeah, you can do that too, right? Like,
Hmm.
what do you think?
Yeah.
Right? Because then you kind of get a sense of where they are. And then you can think about, well, how do I answer it? Is there one piece there that I could respond to? And then you hold on to it. Like, I don't want us to think that, oh my goodness, I've answered that one thing. Like, I got away with like not having to go into the other stuff. Like, that's information for you. And as you are an educator or a leader or a teacher educator, you're always going to be thinking about what your like end goal is, right? You like, where am I trying to get children or students? And then you backwards plan and then you scaffold your way there, right? So it's not about just being in the space and saying whatever kids say is, whatever's going to come up. Of course, you let the children lead. That's no
Hmm.
question. But you also need to go in with a set of like, by the time they leave my classroom, I would like us to have all been able to be comfortable saying that my skin is light and sometimes that's called white. My skin is darker and sometimes that's called black. Melanin is a thing. By the time you leave your threes and fours, right? So how do you find ways to integrate that are natural, that are not overwhelming, that are not giving that all to them in September before they've even asked, right? But do you have some idea of how you're going to start to do this? Because you can't get to anti-racism in adults if you don't start somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And I'll bring it back to the framework because we do have a lot of conversation starters in there as well too,
Exactly.
that we give you for different ways, different things you can say to kids, and help
Mhm.
them have the conversation. But yeah, you don't want to give them too much. And I think there's this thought that we're just gonna have to go through
Yeah.
everything in these 5 minutes, but
Well, so
no,
much
and
of it
they'll
is
come back
because
to
we
it.
as adults are so nervous and
Yes,
confused and
yes,
upset,
yes,
right?
yes,
And we
yes,
think as
yes.
in an adult framework, and
Hmm.
but then you've always got to think about children. So Julia
Yeah.
also shared that amazing learning. She has put away a stack of laundry, including her DEY t-shirt that she wears
Yay.
often. Nice.
Yeah.
And Lucina said, wow, there was so much. And Jeline said, thank
Hmm.
you.
Thank you so
Awesome. Well,
much. All
thank you
right,
so
everyone.
much. Yeah,
I'm
it's
going
great to be
to
here.
do this first. Where did it go? Oh, there we go. Stop the recording.